The pen scratched across the final line of the death certificate. It was dawn in the hospital corridor, and Elara Wynn's hand trembled as she signed her name, but her face remained perfectly still. Around her, the hospital hummed with its strange early morning energy, machines beeping, footsteps echoing, somewhere a baby crying, life continuing as if the world hadn't just collapsed. "Miss Wynn?" The doctor's voice was gentle, rehearsed. "Is there someone we can call for you?" Elara looked up at him. His eyes were kind but tired, and she wondered how many times he'd delivered this particular brand of condolence today. "No," she said quietly. "There's no one." "Your husband? He's at work." The lie came easily now. Julian had left 2 hours ago, claiming an emergency meeting that couldn't wait, at 4 a.m, while her mother lay dying. The doctor nodded, understanding nothing. "We'll take care of the arrangements for transport. Take your time." But there was no time left to take. Ruth Wynn had died owning nothing but her silence, and now that silence belonged to Elara. She walked down the corridor, past rooms where other people were losing other people, and stepped into the parking lot as the sun began to rise. The air was cold against her skin, sharp and real in a way that everything else wasn't. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "Home late. Don't wait up." Elara deleted it without responding. 3 days later, the funeral was held in a modest home on the east side of town, where Ruth had lived most of her adult life. The room was small because Ruth's life had been small. At least, that's what everyone thought. 12 people scattered across 20 rows of chairs, their whispers barely filling the space. Elara sat in the front row, staring at the closed casket, trying to reconcile this polished box with the woman who'd raised her in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like old books and lavender tea. "She was a wonderful librarian," someone murmured behind her. "Always knew exactly which book you needed." Julian sat beside Elara, his leg bouncing with barely contained impatience. His phone buzzed every few minutes. Each time he glanced at it, then at his watch, then back at the casket with something disturbingly close to irritation. "How much longer?" he whispered. Elara didn't answer. If she opened her mouth, she wasn't sure what would come out. On her other side, Maribel Holt squeezed her hand. "I'm here," she whispered. "Whatever you need." Elara squeezed back, grateful for the only person who seemed to understand that grief wasn't something you could schedule. The service ended. Julian was gone before the final prayer, muttering something about clients and deadlines. Maribel stayed, helping Elara accept condolences from people who'd barely known Ruth. "Your mother was very private," some woman said. "I worked with her for 15 years, and I don't think I ever saw her wear jewelry, not even a wedding ring." Elara nodded. She'd asked about that once, when she was 12. Ruth had smiled faintly and said, "Some things are too heavy to wear." At the time, Elara thought she meant emotionally. Now, standing in that half-empty room, she wondered if her mother meant something else entirely. 1 week later, Elara sat alone in her apartment sorting through her mother's belongings. Boxes of books, clothes that still smelled of her, photographs that raised more questions than they answered. One photo lay face down in Ruth's nightstand. When Elara turned it over, her breath caught. A younger Ruth stood in front of a massive estate, stone walls, iron gates, wealth made visible. Her expression wasn't proud, it was guarded, almost afraid. When the phone rang that Tuesday afternoon, Elara almost didn't answer. Unknown number. "Miss Wynn, this is Caleb Rowan from Harrington and Vale. I'm calling regarding your mother's estate." "There must be a mistake," Elara said. "My mother didn't have an estate." "I understand why you'd think that. Your mother left instructions that you be contacted 1 week after her burial. I'd prefer to discuss this in person." Something in his voice, controlled, deliberate, made Elara agree. That night, Julian came home after midnight, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't hers. Elara sat in the dark living room, the photograph in her hands. "You're still up?" he asked, not quite meeting his eyes. "Who was she?" Elara asked, holding up the photo. "My mother. Who was she really?" Julian glanced at it, unimpressed. "Your mother was a librarian, that's who she was. I'm exhausted. We'll talk tomorrow." But they wouldn't. They both knew it. The next afternoon, Elara rode an elevator to the 42nd floor of a downtown tower. Caleb Rowan's office overlooked the city, glass and steel and money pressed into architecture. Art hung on the walls, quietly expensive, the kind you only recognized if you knew what to look for. Caleb was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with silver threaded through dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Thank you for coming, Miss Wynn," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. Please let me finish." Elara nodded, her heart beginning to pound. "Your mother's name wasn't Ruth Wynn. It was Ruth Calder." The room tilted. She was born into one of the most influential industrial families on the East Coast: manufacturing, technology, real estate, pharmaceuticals. At the time she disappeared 42 years ago, the family was worth approximately $3 billion. "That's impossible," Elara whispered. "My mother shopped at thrift stores. She lived in a rent-controlled apartment. She chose that life," Caleb said gently. "She walked away at 23, rejected an arranged marriage, rejected the family machine. They disowned her publicly. She vanished." "Why?" "Because she believed that kind of wealth corrupts inevitably. She wanted to build something different, something clean." He slid an envelope across the desk. "She wrote this for you." Elara opened it with shaking hands. Her mother's handwriting, precise, familiar, breaking-hearted. "My dearest Elara, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're angry. Angry I lied. Angry I hid this from you. Angry I let you struggle when I could have made everything easy. I need you to understand. I didn't hide this from you. I hid it for you. I grew up in a golden cage, every choice made for me, every relationship transactional, every smile calculated. When I left, I became nobody, and it saved me. I wanted you to know who you were without the weight of what we had. I wanted you to build your own strength, your own values, your own voice. The money is yours now, all of it, built carefully, ethically, quietly, just patience and principle. But there is one condition. You must manage it yourself. No board making decisions for you, no hiding behind proxies. If you accept this inheritance, you accept the responsibility of what it means. I taught you to be strong by letting you struggle. Now, I'm giving you the tools to help others do the same. Build something good, my darling, and remember, power doesn't announce itself. With all my love, Mom." Elara read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. "How much?" she finally asked. Caleb placed a single page on the desk. "As of this morning, approximately $4.7 billion. The number hung in the air like something physical, impossible, real. "Why didn't she tell me before she died?" "She said you needed to grieve her as she was," Caleb replied quietly, "not as what she represented. She didn't want money to complicate your memory of her." Elara laughed, a broken sound. "Too late for that." 2 weeks later, the cracks in Elara's marriage became chasms. Julian barely spoke to her,
When he did, his words were sharp, resentful. "You're not even here anymore," he snapped one evening, standing in the kitchen while Elara sat at the table surrounded by financial documents. "You're using your mother's death as an excuse to check out completely." "I'm sorry," Elara said automatically. "You're always sorry, but you never change." He grabbed his keys. "I'm going out." "Where?" "Does it matter?" 3 days later, he came home early. Elara was on a call with Caleb, discussing the structure of one of Ruth's holdings. She held up a finger. "Just 1 minute." Julian didn't wait. "We need to talk, now." She ended the call. "What's wrong?" "I want a divorce." The words landed without drama, flat and final. "What? This isn't working. You're not who I married anymore. I can't do this." She stared at him, at this man she'd promised forever to in a ceremony her mother had called lovely but unnecessary. Ruth had known. Somehow she'd known. "Fine," Elara said. He looked surprised, as if he had expected her to beg. "I'll have my lawyer contact you." "You already have one." His silence confirmed it. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. He left that afternoon, packed his clothes, his laptop, his expensive coffee maker, left everything else. Elara sat in the empty apartment and felt relief. Not sadness, not anger, just a strange, weightless relief. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Maribel. "I heard about Julian. I'm so sorry. I'm here if you need me." Elara almost called her. Almost. Instead, she opened Instagram, scrolled mindlessly looking for nothing in particular. She found it 3 posts down. Julian and Maribel, at a restaurant, his hand on her waist, her smile too comfortable, too familiar. The photo was 2 days old, before the divorce. The caption read, "Sometimes the right person was right in front of you all along." Elara stared at it until the screen blurred. Then she saw the comments. Friends congratulating them. People who'd been at her wedding saying things like, "Finally," and "About time," and "You two are perfect together." How long? How long had everyone known except her? She scrolled through Maribel's profile with hands that had stopped shaking. Photos going back months. Julian in the background of several. Maribel wearing a scarf Elara recognized as his. The funeral. Maribel holding her hand while Julian texted someone across the room. Were they planning their next meeting while Ruth's body lay 20 feet away? She didn't cry. Something else woke up inside her, something cold and patient and calculating. She called Caleb. "I need to know everything," she said when he answered. "Every company, every holding, every structure, everything I control." "That's going to take some time." "I have time," Elara said. "They think I have nothing but time." Months passed. Elara learned the architecture of her inheritance. Ruth's money wasn't random, it was engineered. Dozens of companies, each legitimate, each profitable, each invisible to anyone not looking for them specifically. One name surfaced repeatedly: Meridian Logistics Solutions. "How much of Meridian do we own?" Elara asked during one of their weekly meetings. 68%, Caleb said, checking his notes. "Why?" "Who owns the rest?" "Various small investors, no one with significant leverage." "I want to know every company Meridian has invested in, every contract they hold, everything." He studied her carefully. "May I ask why?" "Due diligence." He didn't believe her, but he did the work. 2 weeks later, she had the complete picture. Meridian had invested in 12 companies. One of them was Crosspoint Delivery Systems, Julian's company. Julian owned 40%. Meridian owned 35%. Other investors held the rest, which meant Elara owned 35% of her ex-husband's company. She sat with this information for 3 days. 3 days of temptation. Late one night, she drafted an email to Caleb. detailed exactly what she wanted done: a board meeting, a vote, a complete reorganization that would leave Julian with nothing. Her finger hovered over the send button. She could destroy him, right now, one click. Then she deleted it. Not yet, not like this. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Power doesn't announce itself. Caleb called her the next morning. "Everything all right? I expected to hear from you yesterday." "Everything is fine," Elara said. "I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About the difference between revenge and strategy." If you're enjoying this story so far, stay with me, because what Elara does next isn't loud or dramatic, but it's absolutely decisive. 6 months after Ruth's death, Elara had changed. She cut her hair shorter, started dressing in clothes that actually fit, that made her feel powerful instead of invisible, stopped apologizing for taking up space. She attended board meetings for companies that didn't know she owned them. She listened, learned, waited. Julian's company was growing. Maribel had been promoted to senior director at Lavish Hospitality Group, a boutique hotel chain. They'd moved in together, posted photos of their new apartment, their new life, their new happiness. Elara watched it all from a distance, feeling nothing but a cold, patient certainty. Then Caleb called one afternoon in early spring. "There's an opportunity. Lavish Hospitality is looking for new investors. They're struggling with debt restructuring. If we move quietly, we can acquire majority control for a very reasonable price." "Do it," Elara said, "but keep it quiet. Always." The acquisition took 6 weeks. Lavish didn't know who bought them. They just knew that suddenly their debt was cleared, their operations streamlined, and their new owner preferred to remain anonymous. Maribel never suspected that the woman whose husband she'd stolen was their new boss, several corporate layers removed. One evening, Elara attended a meeting for an education nonprofit struggling to fund its scholarship programs. She sat in the back, listening to passionate people talk about underserved students who just needed a chance. When the meeting ended, the director approached her. "What would you do if you had unlimited funding?" Elara asked. The director laughed tiredly. "Change everything." "Show me how." 1 year after Ruth's death, the Global Education Summit filled the downtown convention center with 3,000 attendees. Educators, philanthropists, policymakers, everyone who believed that access to education could change the world. Elara stood backstage, wearing a navy suit that cost more than her mother's entire wardrobe. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. "5 minutes, Ms. Wynn," a stage manager said. Ms. Wynn, not Mrs. Cross. Not anymore. She walked onto the stage to polite applause. The audience didn't know who she was. They'd been told only that a major announcement was coming. "Good morning," Elara began, her voice carrying across the massive space. "My name is Elara Wynn. Some of you knew my mother as Ruth Wynn, a school librarian who spent 40 years helping children find the right books. What you didn't know is that she was also Ruth Calder, and she spent those same 40 years building something extraordinary." The room went silent, utterly silent. "Today, I'm announcing the Calder Initiative, a $10 billion endowment dedicated to funding education for underserved students worldwide. Full scholarships, no strings, no requirements beyond merit and need. We start with 10,000 students this year. In 5 years, we'll reach 100,000. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. "My mother taught me that power doesn't announce itself, but purpose does. This is her legacy. This is mine. Thank you."
She walked off the stage as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Caleb met her in the wings, smiling. That was perfect. It was true. She took a breath. Now comes the rest. That afternoon, Julian saw the news on his office television. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "Turn that up," he told his assistant. He watched the replay, watched Elara, his Elara, who'd been a nobody, who'd had nothing, announce a $10 billion initiative. His hands started shaking. "Get me Meridian on the phone, now." The call took 20 minutes to arrange. When it finally came through, the voice on the other end was cold and professional. "Mr. Cross, I was wondering when you'd call. I need to know who owns Meridian, the real owners. That information is confidential. I'm one of your major investments. I have a right. You have the rights granted in your contract, Mr. Cross, nothing more." "I saw the news," Julian said, his voice rising. "Elara Wynn. Does she... Mr. Cross, you should read your investor agreements more carefully, particularly the change of control clauses. Have a good day." The line went dead. Julian pulled up his contracts, really reading them for the first time. There, buried in legal language, Meridian Logistics Solutions maintained right of first refusal on all major decisions, including executive appointments, strategic direction, and company sales. Which meant whoever owned Meridian controlled his company, and he'd never even asked who that was. Across town, Maribel sat in her pristine corner office, surrounded by awards and accolades, when her phone rang. "Miss Holt, this is regarding your position at Lavish Hospitality Group." "Yes?" Her voice was confident. She'd just closed a major contract. "We're restructuring the leadership team. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately." "What? Why? I've exceeded every performance metric." "This isn't about performance. It's about strategic realignment under new ownership. You'll receive 6-month severance. Your office should be cleared by Friday." "Who made this decision? I want to speak to them." "That won't be possible. The decision is final." Maribel sat very still as the call ended. 10 years. She worked 10 years to get here. Gone in a 5-minute phone call. She opened her laptop, searching frantically for information about Lavish's new ownership. The trail led nowhere. Shell companies, anonymous holdings, dead ends. Then she saw another news alert, another story about Elara Wynn, about the Calder Initiative, about a fortune no one knew existed. And Maribel understood. 2 days later, Julian appeared at Elara's office building unannounced. Security tried to stop him, but Elara, watching on the camera feed from her desk, told them to let him up. When the elevator doors opened on the 38th floor, he stepped into a lobby that screamed money and power. Marble floors, original art, floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked smaller than she remembered, thinner, desperate. "Elara," he stopped in the doorway of her office. "I need to talk to you." She didn't stand up from her desk, didn't offer him a seat, just looked at him with the same expression she'd worn signing her mother's death certificate, perfectly still, perfectly calm. "You have 5 minutes." "Elara, please," he stepped closer, hands shaking. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we can fix this. We can—" "You need something," she interrupted, not a question. His face flushed. "My company. Something's happening with my investors. I can't get straight answers. If you came into money, if you could help." "You want me to invest in your company?" "Yes, or just, I don't know, use your connections, whatever you have access to now." Elara stood up slowly, walked to the window overlooking the city. All those people down there, living their small, ordinary lives. She'd been one of them once. "You left me the day after my mother's funeral. Actually, you'd already left before that. You just made it official." "I know, I was wrong. I was scared and stupid, and you don't need anything from me, Julian." "But I need—" "You don't need anything from me," she repeated, turning to face him. Her expression hadn't changed, hadn't hardened or softened, just remained perfectly, terrifyingly neutral. 5 minutes are up. "Elara, please. Security will show you out." He left. Elara watched him disappear into the elevator and felt absolutely nothing. Her phone buzzed. "Caleb, everything okay?" She replied, "Everything's perfect." 3 months later, the restructuring was complete. Julian's company had new leadership, new direction, new vision. Julian remained as a minority stakeholder with no operational control. He'd keep some money, enough to be comfortable, not enough to rebuild what he'd lost. The company he'd built, the dream he'd had, that belonged to someone else now. Maribel found work at a smaller hospitality firm, decent pay, no prestige, no corner office, no awards. She and Julian were still together, but the Instagram posts had stopped. No more brunch posts, no more captions about soulmates and destiny. Elara heard these updates through the machinery of her holdings, through reports that crossed her desk every week. She read them with the same detachment she'd read weather forecasts. The Calder Initiative had awarded its first scholarships. 10,000 students who would have had no chance suddenly had every chance. Their acceptance letters had been mailed last week. Elara had read some of them, essays from kids who dreamed bigger than their circumstances, who just needed someone to believe in them, like her mother had believed in her. 1 year and 3 months after Ruth's death, Elara drove to the cemetery alone. It was a crisp fall afternoon. The trees had been painted in shades of rust and gold, the same colors her mother had loved best. Leaves crunched under her feet as she walked across the grass. She sat beside the headstone, simple granite, just Ruth's name and dates. No quotes, no flowery epitaphs, just the facts. "I read your letter again," Elara said to the stone, to the air, to whatever remained of Ruth Wynn in this world. "The part where you taught me to be strong by letting me struggle. I was angry about that for a long time." A bird called somewhere nearby. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of autumn. "I'm not angry anymore. I understand now. You gave me something more valuable than money. You gave me myself." She pulled out the letter, worn now from multiple readings. There was a line near the end she'd missed the first dozen times, small and easy to overlook. "I hope you never have to become me. I hope you find a way to have both, the power and the connection." Elara had become her mother, isolated, hidden, powerful, and alone. And she didn't want that anymore. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts to a name she'd been avoiding, David Chen, someone she'd known in college, someone who'd sent a condolence message when Ruth died, then checked in every few weeks after, someone who'd been kind without expecting anything in return. She typed, "I know it's been a while, but would you want to grab coffee sometime?" The response came 2 minutes later. "I'd like that." Elara smiled, not a triumphant smile, not a calculated one, just a smile. "I'm going to try," she said to her mother's grave, "to try to have both, like you wanted." That evening she stood in her office in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights were beginning to twinkle as darkness settled in. On her desk sat 3 things: her mother's letter, a photo of the first Calder Initiative scholarship recipients, and her wedding ring. She picked up the ring, held it for a moment, feeling its weight, its history, everything it had meant and stopped meaning. Then she opened her desk drawer and placed it inside, not throwing it away, not making a statement, just putting it down.
Her phone buzzed. David, confirming their coffee date for tomorrow morning. Elara typed back a confirmation, then looked out at the city again. Somewhere down there, Julian was probably checking his diminished bank account, wondering how everything had slipped away. Maribel was probably wondering what went wrong, how her perfect life had unraveled. They were probably blaming circumstances, bad luck, poor timing. They'd never understand that the librarian's daughter had become the architect of their downfall, that the woman they'd dismissed as nobody had been quietly, methodically, patiently dismantling everything they'd taken from her. And that was fine, better than fine. Because her mother was right. Power doesn't announce itself. Elara Calder Wynn turned away from the window. Tomorrow she had a meeting with the initiative's board. 500 more scholarships to approve, 500 more lives to change, and coffee with David, a chance at something normal, something real. Some people inherit money, others inherit clarity. She'd inherited both, and now she was learning to inherit something else, the courage to build a life that was hers alone. If this story moved you,
Hit that like button and leave a comment telling us what you would have done in Elara's position. Would you have chosen quiet revenge or something more dramatic? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about resilience, betrayal, and the strength it takes to rebuild yourself from nothing. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so successful that you make their betrayal irrelevant. It's finding peace not in their suffering, but in your own transformation. Thanks for watching.